Okay, we're continuing with Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, Change of Heart. Shukadev Goswami is speaking, and he's been asked by Maharaj Parikshit to explain further the talks between Shukadev, this is Sutta being asked by Shaunaka, Sutta Goswami. So Sutta Goswami goes back to Canto 1, in the very beginning. Sutta Goswami is narrating what he heard from Shukadev and Maharaj Parikshit. So Shukadev Goswami is narrating here the conversation between Shukadev and Maharaj Parikshit, saying the conversations that they had, the Hari Katha that they were sharing, must have been really outstanding, because they're satam, they're pure devotees, fixed in pure goodness. And so surely their topics were in relation to Hari, and surely they must have been very wonderful. And as an emphasis has gone already, and now it's being underscored. Emphasis went already to hearing Hari Katha, because the question from first canto was, what are those topics that one should always be heard, chanted, remembered, and worshipped? So it's Hari Katha. So now comes what happens when somebody doesn't do Hari Katha, they're going to do something else. And that's text 22. The eyes, which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead, symbolic representations meaning the deity form, lingani, forms. The symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his forms, name, qualities, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock. Those eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead are like those printed on the plumes of a peacock. And the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. And this is a very strong, intense section. It's a 2-page purport. Especially for household devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu forms, like Radha, Krishna, Lakshmi, Narayana, Sita, Ram especially, or any other form of the Lord, like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gornatai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalagram, Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu, like Trivikram, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudev, Narayana, and Damodar, as recommended in the Vaishnava Tantras or Puranas. What are Vaishnava Tantras? What's the meaning? Vaishnava Tantras. What are Tantras, anyways? Tantras are how-to descriptions, procedures for something. That's what a Tantra is. And Vaishnava Tantras are the sections of the Vedas that deal with how to, for example, how to do deity worship. Narada Pancharatra is a section of the Vedas that describes how to do deity worship. It's a Vaishnava Tantra. So with reference to Vaishnava Tantras or Puranas, One's family should worship strictly, following the directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi. Any member of the family who is above 12 years of age. How old are you? 11, okay. Who is above 12 years of age, of course your mom and dad are above 12 years of age, most likely, should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and all the members of the household should be engaged in the daily service of the Lord, beginning from morning, parentheses, 4 a.m. 4 a.m. till night, parentheses, 10 p.m. by performing Mangala Arti, Niranjana, Archana Puja Kirtan, Shringara Bhoja Vaikali, Sandhya Arati, Pata, Bhoga at night, Shayana Arati, etc. So he doesn't give an explanation of what these terms mean. It's that in our ISKCON temples, the morning arti, Mangal arti, and then the arti that comes after the deities are bathed and dressed, Shayana arti, and then the evening arti after the deities again, or the offering is made and arti is performed. Sandhya arti, etc. Engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master will greatly help the householder to purify their very existence and make it rapid progress in spiritual knowledge. How does worshiping deity help one progress in advancing in spiritual knowledge? It helps making progress in spiritual knowledge because when the heart becomes cleansed by engaging the senses in prescribed and direct devotional activities like deity worship, the senses become cleansed, the heart becomes cleansed, and then one's capacity when reading or hearing to understand better, or the filters are cleared, and one can hear more transparently, thus benefiting one in spiritual advancement of spiritual knowledge. Simple theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for a neophyte devotee. Book knowledge is theoretical, whereas the archana process is practical. Spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge, and that is the guaranteed way for attainment of spiritual perfection. Prabhupada would use the term jnanam, vijnanam, theoretical and practical. Jnanam, vijnanam. Vijnana meaning realization, or by applying the theoretical, one gets some realization. That's vijnana. Theoretical and practical. The training of devotional service for a neophyte devotee completely depends on the expert spiritual master who knows how to lead his disciple to make gradual progress towards the path back home, back to Godhead. One should not become a pseudo-spiritual master as a matter of business to meet one's family expenditures, semicolon. One must be an expert spiritual master to deliver the disciple from the clutches of impending death. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has defined the bona fide qualities of the spiritual master, and one of the verses in that description reads, Shri Vigrahara Dhanadityanana Shringaratan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktams Chaniyunjatopi Bande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Shri Vigraha is the archa, or suitable worshipable form of the Lord, and the disciple should be engaged in worshiping the deity regularly. He does another list. By Shringara, by proper decoration and dressing, as also by Mandira Marjana, the matter of cleansing the temple. The spiritual master teaches the devotee all these kindly and personally to help him gradually in realization of the transcendental name, quality, form, etc. of the Lord. A few comments that Prabhupada would make regularly. One is, there's no, from Krishna's perspective, from the transcendental perspective, there's no difference whether in a temple or in one's home, no difference between cleaning the temple and worshiping the deity in the temple from Krishna's perspective. Because obviously the activity is different, but it's not that one is a Sudra activity and the other is a Brahminical activity. They're both in service to the, if one's consciousness is right, then one's consciousness becomes cleansed and thus pleasing to the deity. Making the temple room clean is as good as worshiping the deity in the temple. Although by divisions of labor, the person who is eligible to clean the floor may not be eligible to worship the deity in the temple. But from Krishna's perspective, so there is distinction, but from Krishna's perspective, they're of equal value. By cleansing the temple and before the deity, one's heart becomes cleansed. I was visiting a few weeks ago in Atlanta, the suburbs in Atlanta, and the Bhakti Vriksha leader there, his wife was he and his wife were attending most of the classes, and I told the story in deity worship about the deity's reciprocation. When you worship a deity in a very dedicated and personal way, the deity will reciprocate to help you understand. They're very gladly accepting this devoted service. I told the story that there's a very senior devotee couple in another city, and the wife is so occupied with her worship of her deities at home, she doesn't really take on service of the deity in the temple. She performs, as the temple does, 5 offerings and artis after those offerings every day, and has been doing for like 15, 17 years, something like that. She has Radha Krishna deities. She's very devoted. She's not, some people are they brag about it, or they're a little bit showy. She is not that kind of person. And I said, wow, you have a lot of dedication. You must feel some attachment to your deities, and they must feel some attachment to you. She smiled and nodded. She didn't get into it. So I made another comment, or asked, what realizations do you have? She looked at her husband and she shared something that she normally doesn't share. She said, in 5 artis and 5 offerings, whenever I make the offering, I take Krishna's flute away, place it to the side, and when the offering is completed and take the offering away, I put Krishna's flute back. And on 3 occasions, when I went to put Krishna's flute back, it wasn't there. And I started getting very worried. And I looked at the deity, and the deity had the flute. And she just smiled. she didn't say the obvious, but the deity, her Krishna deity, I think it was Radha Shyamasundar or his deities, he wanted her to know that he was directly involved in her dedicated, devoted service. Now, he doesn't have to do that. There can be other ways that he can do that. Then I said there's another devotee, I won't mention where, but in the Janmashtami celebration, because Janmashtami is coming up, their Janmashtami celebration, they were just totally immersed, absorbed in worship of the deity for Krishna Janmashtami. They were like really, really, really happy. It was one of those Janmashtamis that was really hot. Sometimes it's really hot. And they were concerned about the deities being too hot. So what to do, because there were fans, but it was still really hot on the altar. So it was their service to change the clothes of the deity from their day outfit to the evening Janmashtami outfit. And they went to take the clothes off of the deity, and they were soaking wet. Not like little damp or something, but soaking wet. She was surprised. And so she moved the clothes and took the clothes to some other devotee, pujaris, and asked them, am I imagining this? But, it was a little reciprocation from Krishna to indicate to this devotee that he's a person. It's not just marble or wood or stone statue, but a person. So when I was saying this, the wife of the Bhakti Vriksha leader came afterwards. She didn't say it during the class because she didn't want to be a show-off. But she said, this happened about a week ago when I was getting ready to put the deities to rest. And while I was getting ready to put the deities to rest, I heard a sound like sweeping. And I was, what's that? And it continued. She's just there with the deities and the altar and the temple room of their home. And then she discovered later that her husband normally does the sweeping before she puts the deities to rest, but he hadn't done that that evening. So that she took it. I now understand that the deity was reminding us, you should clean the temple room before you put me to rest. Now, these are little things, but they're really big things in the life of someone who is very devoted to their deity, because the deity worship process is in fact personal. Worldly people don't get it. And religious people kind of get it. And then devoted people really get it. And anyone that's served deities for some time, they feel some attachment. And with that attachment, then there's a sense of mutual affection between them and the deity. I mean, that happens. And anyone that's done a serious amount of deity worship for some time knows that it's true. There's feelings towards the deity. I mean, like the book that Giriraj Maharaj wrote. It's only twice in this very thick book, but Prabhupada made a statement to Radharasa Bihari when there was like difficulty and difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, but Prabhupada made a pledge, I'll build you a temple. And difficulty continued, but the temple came up. Because there was a commitment to the deity that I'll build you a temple. And despite all obstacles, the temple came up. There's a very interesting description. Have any of you read that book, I'll Build You a Temple, Giriraj Maharaj? It's really nice. It takes some time because it's a big, thick book, but it's very well written. At one point, there was a very envious man that wanted to have them, get out. So he not only hired gundas, but they were carrying guns. And it just so happened that there was another fellow who was a volunteer person that was a Kshatriya type person. I forget his name. But he and his son happened to be there when the gundas with guns came. He told his son, go get our guns. And so he had a pistol and a rifle. And he shot shots in the air. Said, come on. He challenged them. And because they were bashing what was the temporary temple, because it made it, according to local law, there in the city of Bombay, as long as the temple was there, then they couldn't take over. So they were dismantling the temple. And the only thing, the pujari was a lady, and she was continuing with the arti right in the middle of this gunfire and bashing of the temple. Was a corrugated metal structure, the ones that are like in waves. They just pasted it together and stuck them together, and that was the temple. So all that was left while she was doing the arti was, there was a Nrsimha deity, Nrsimha photo above the frame that was right in front of the altar, and that was remaining. The frame, the Nrsimha deity, or Nrsimha photo, and the deity, something like that. You can read the book, it'll give you the detail. But, there was the reciprocation from the deity because of the commitment to the deity. And, much ordeal, but the obstacles were overcome. And now it's a wonderful temple. And all the things that Prabhupada wanted are there because of that dedication and commitment. There are many nice stories of Prabhupada, the deity reciprocation with Prabhupada and Prabhupada's dedicated service to the deity, as well as devotees. The point is, there's a relationship that goes to a very personal level. The form of the deity is a person. The paraphernalia of the deity is also worshipable. It's called tadiya. There's a nice passage in when Uddhava is giving, Krishna asks Uddhava for advice. How'd you like Krishna to ask you for advice? Not so likely, right? Krishna was asking Uddhava for advice, what to do, because two requests came into the Sudharma Assembly Hall almost at the same time. One from a messenger from 20,000 kings that were imprisoned by Jarasandha, and they wanted Krishna to free them from his prison. Virtuous kings, devotees of Krishna in prison, 20,000. So Krishna had to do something. He wanted to do something. And at the same time, Narada came making a request for Krishna to come. It was on behalf of Yudhishthira to come for the Rajasuya Yajna. So he's asking Uddhava, what should I do? There's two requests. So Uddhava gave his advice. First, he, with folded palms, acknowledged, Krishna, you don't need advice. but you're giving me some service. So he gave the advice that Jarasandha should first be killed. And once he was killed, the 20,000 kings could be freed. And then the precondition for the Rajasuya Yagya that all kings would offer tribute would be fulfilled, because otherwise Jarasandha wouldn't do it. So he had to be removed. So Krishna liked that advice. The members of the assembly liked the advice. And so they immediately began preparations, except for Ugrasena, Balaram, and a few others to stay back, Aniruddha, and a few others to stay back and protect the city of Dwarka in their absence. The whole city emptied out. All 16,000 wives and their 10 sons and 1 daughter and the whole shebang. They went, big procession, big caravan, palanquins for the queens and everything. That's a lot of people. And accommodations on the way and meals on the way, and not an easy thing to organize. When they reached Indraprastha, there was a grand reception because Krishna's come to Indraprastha, first visit. And with all of his entourage and practically the whole city of Dwarka, so it's a big deal. So it's a big reception. The details are found. And then when Yudhisthira is describing what he wants from this Rajasuya Yagya, what he wanted from the Rajasuya Yagya was not that he becomes king. What he wanted was that part of the Yagya where the most exalted person is identified and worshipped in front of everybody. And he wanted that make this distinction between those that take shelter and those that don't. And what's the outcome of those who take shelter and the outcome of those who don't? He wanted everyone to see, the world to see, the demigods, the rishis, and all it was like a big invitation list, big event. He wanted them all to see Krishna being worshipped as the supreme amongst all exalted persons. And then he makes a comment that even your shoes are worshipable. And those who are devotees know that. And those that aren't devotees, they're disrespectful. It's some of you know Ramayana. You know a little bit about Ramayana? Yeah? Do you have a favorite part from Ramayana? The battle, right? Yeah. What's your favorite part? Yeah? Boys like battles. Is that your favorite section? Yudhya-khanda. Some people like Sundara-khanda. You know, but then in Sundara-khanda also Hanuman is doing some amazing stuff over there in Lanka, burning and bashing and, takes a big metal pole and breaks it off, and the generals come out and he smashes the generals, one after the next, and roars. It's nice. There's a celebrated, amongst many, a celebrated commentator in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya named Vedanta Deshika. And he was a prolific writer. So somebody challenged him, can you, if you, in a week's time, can you write 1,000 verses glorifying the shoes of Ram? He accepted the challenge in 3 hours, 1,008. And to this day, they're celebrated. I know a devotee that made little video recordings of each, well, I don't know how many, how far he got, but verse by verse by verse by verse by verse, description of Vedanta Deshika's glorification of Lord Ram's shoes, his padukas. Vedanta Deshika. That's for people that like to taste the poetry of glorification of the personality of Godhead in his shoes, because his shoes, it's described in our, because, back to the deity worship, it's described in our deity worship manuals that as worshipable as the deity is the paraphernalia of the deity. Like, the bell and the conch shell and the paraphernalia become as worshipable. It's called tadiya. Some of you may be going to the Chicago temple this evening, and if you look closely in front of the Jagannath altar, there's something that looks like a Shila, but it's not. What is it? It's Nrsimha Tadiya. I had to ask, some of the old devotees there. Shankar Pandit explained, it's from a very, very, very ancient Nrsimha temple. It's a stone from that Nrsimha temple. So it's Nrsimha Tadiya. Not a Shalagram Shila, it's not any kind of Shila, it's just Tadiya, but worshipable. When the devotees were raising funds for the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, you know what that is? TOVP? You know? Yes or no? Not sure. Not sure. Okay, be honest, you're not sure. Srila Prabhupada had a desire that his followers build a grand Adbhuta Mandir. Adbhuta means fantastic, like awesome, spectacular, marvelous, wonderful, Adbhuta Mandir. And its main feature, he didn't call it Shri Shri Radha Madhava Mandir or Panchatattva Mandir, he called it Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So what's a planetarium? It's a Western term. A planetarium is a place where, kind of like a museum, where you go and the scientific type people make a display of what the universal structure looks like from, modern telescopes and modern, whatever it is, modern astronomy. That's what a planetarium is. So Prabhupada wanted a Vedic planetarium. And he described what he wanted. There's recordings where he's describing to Ambarish Prabhu what he wanted. He was describing that the universe is structured, some portion of the universe is structured like a chandelier. You know what a chandelier is? You've heard the term before? Yeah. A chandelier is kind of like a really fancy light fixture. From the ceiling, there's something suspended. Commonly, very fancy ones, they're crystal. And there's like a whole array of crystal spread out, hanging from a central point at the top, from the ceiling. So something coming down with like a support cable and electricity, of course, and then lamps throughout the crystal structure, and then the lamps reflect through the crystal, and it diffuses, like in the temple in Chicago, in the central part of the temple room. That's a chandelier made of crystal. Needs to be cleaned, by the way. And there's a way to clean it, but it needs to be cleaned. And Prabhupada explained that's the structure of the universe. So he wanted that to be designed so it could move. Not just show, but not moving, because the structure of the universe, it moves. The chandelier moves. And the thing that's right at the very top of that chandelier, what's that? Dhruvaloka. Dhruvaloka. You can read about it in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You read, right? Sometimes. Chandelier. Dhruvaloka. It's the top part. And below Dhruvaloka, there's the Sapta Rishis, which in our Western astronomy, it's the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is the Sapta Rishis in Vedic astronomy. And it's just below the pole star, or Dhruvaloka. And then below that are the upper portion of the heavenly realm, the middle portion, the lower portion of the heavenly realm. And then that's Svargaloka. And below that is Bhuvarloka. And there's regions in the Bhuvarloka region. And then down here is where we are, Bhuloka, or Bhumandala. So the Temple of Vedic Planetarium is designed so that from Bhuvarloka up all the way up to the topmost parts of the heavenly realm, they're going to move, showing where they are, how large the planets are, and by some technology, they're going to move where the sun moves on its Kala Chakra and so forth and so on. And now I forget why I'm telling you all about this. I started speaking about the Tadiya, the paraphernalia. Anyway, the worshipable planet in this universe is the planet of Vishnu. That's the pole star. That's Dhruvaloka. Dhruvaloka is occupying a place where Kshirodakshayi Vishnu resides, or the ocean of milk. And he's residing on Sweta Dweep, the white island in the middle of the ocean of milk. And when the demigods go to offer prayers to Vishnu to descend and help protect against demoniac kings, etc., that's where they go. It's a transcendental planet within this earthly realm, and it's worshipable, and that's why all the planets are circumambulating in a clockwise direction. Just like when we circumambulate Tulsi Devi, you keep your right side to the Tulsi Devi, right? So you move, that means you move in a clockwise direction, right? And the planets move in a clockwise direction vertically below the worshipable Dhruvaloka, but they're worshiping Dhruvaloka because it's the abode of the Supreme Lord. And the paraphernalia of the Supreme Lord is as worshipable. The garlands that are offered to the deity are also as worshipable as the deity. Paraphernalia of the deity is as worshipable of the deity as the deity. So there are things in this world that are of a spiritual nature. And back to this purport, deity worship is one of those spiritual things that were within this world. So the idea of this purport, verse and purport, is to utilize these senses, the seeing power and the moving power, the legs and the eyes, to go to the temple of the Lord and see the deity of the Lord and spiritualize the indriyas, the senses. I'm going to read the last paragraph and then we'll see if there's discussion. If one is unable to maintain a temple at home, he should go to another's temple, where all the above performances are regularly and executed, visiting the temple of a devotee, and looking at the profusely decorated forms of the Lord, well dressed, in a well-decorated sanctified temple, naturally infuse the mundane mind with spiritual inspiration. People should visit holy places like Vrindavan, where such temples and worship of the deity are specifically maintained. Formerly, all rich men, like kings and rich merchants, constructed such temples under the direction of expert devotees of the Lord, like the 6 Goswamis, and it is the duty of the common man to take advantage of these temples and festivals observed in the holy places of pilgrimage by following in the footsteps of great devotees. Anuvraja. One should not visit all these sanctified pilgrimage places and temples with sightseeing in mind, but one must go to such temples and sanctified places, immortalized by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, and be guided by proper men who know the science. This is called Anuvraja. Anu means to follow. It is therefore best to follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master, even in visiting temples and the holy places of pilgrimage. One who does not move in that way is as good as a standing tree, condemned by the Lord not to move. The moving tendency of the human being is misused by visiting places for sightseeing. The best purpose of such traveling tendencies could be fulfilled by visiting the holy places established by great acharyas, and thereby not being misled by the atheistic propaganda of money-making men who have no knowledge of spiritual matters. Prabhupada's got his boxing gloves on, making strong statements. But those strong statements are for protection of innocent, because there are persons who would exploit the innocent. I got this long, sorrowful letter from a devotee in China that was like page and a half, 2 pages of, what they've been through. This one taking advantage, and then that one taking advantage, and the other one taking advantage, and just, trying to be sincere and trying to be helpful and being taken advantage of, and they feel really hurt. Anyway, so that happens in this world. That can happen in spiritual, it's so-called religious matters as well. And it isn't even necessarily that the persons who are taking advantage really understand they're taking advantage. But if someone is giving knowledge, then best that they have proper knowledge. And how do you get proper knowledge? By hearing from the proper source. And if you don't hear from the proper source, you're going to have something else. So somehow we became fortunate, and Prabhupada abundantly made this proper teaching available. This particular verse in purport, I often read it when there's a deity installation in someone's home. I just read the verse in purport because it's very good instruction for householders, how important it is, how to do it, what it looks like, how it's connected with the hearing and chanting. Where does it lead to? With some strong words in there, along with encouragement. Somebody just forwarded to me today, a godbrother, Abhiram Prabhu, just forwarded today, another godbrother, Abhinanda, has gathered together many ancient videos of Prabhupada's activities, and with some music in the background, or sometimes interviews of devotees who were present when Prabhupada was there. One that I just saw this morning was Prabhupada was in Melbourne, and it's described that a devotee was walking right behind Prabhupada in a botanical garden. It was like, kind of a long Australian-ish narrative of different devotees speaking interesting things. Prabhupada commented, the British, when colonizing in Australia, they had this penchant for making very fantastic botanical gardens, gathering trees from many, many different places, exquisite, rare trees, and planting them and nurturing them very nicely. So, nice thing. And Prabhupada said, but nobody's here. See, all the cars are running here and there to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. And here we are, we're going to the botanical garden because we have a life of devotion to Krishna. It was like appreciating. And then another devotee said Prabhupada would identify what the name of the tree was and give the Latin name of the tree and describe the medicinal benefits of the tree. And the devotees then would designate it to go because there's a little placard at the bottom. And it was, in fact, the Latin name of the tree. Prabhupada got it right every time. I mean, Prabhupada was not only well-versed in spiritual knowledge, but even, he wasn't a botanist, but he knew so many things. Then another devotee was saying they were walking along a pathway, a paved pathway through the botanical gardens. And at some point, Prabhupada decided to walk towards a pond. And there was thick grass. So he just walked off the walkway. And on one side was the GBC, the other side was the temple president, and Prabhupada was in the middle in the front. This devotee said, I walked right behind him as close as I could. And I was looking at the ground, and I saw that the footprints, because it was tall enough grass and it was wet, of the president and the GBC, but he couldn't see Prabhupada's footprints. So he got really close, and he saw Prabhupada was touching the ground, but the grass wasn't even bent. What to speak of, the others had very clear impressions of where they had stepped, and he was like puzzled, how's this? He didn't ask Prabhupada, but one time Jamuna asked Prabhupada, same thing. Jamuna's, the biography about her by Dina Tarani. And she and Prabhupada, just the two of them, in London, walking early in the morning. In London, it's, wet. It rains a lot and it's overcast a lot. And they're walking through a field, and it was, the narration goes, she thought, boy, it doesn't get any better than this. I could just walk in the footsteps of a pure devotee. So she started walking behind Prabhupada. And she noticed that there were no footsteps. And she looked behind herself, and there were footsteps. But she looked at Prabhupada, and there was no footsteps. And she asked Prabhupada, how come you don't have footsteps, and I have? And he smiled and said, one day you'll understand. One more Prabhupada story. And when Prabhupada was in South India, before he came to the West, he had attempted to establish a league of devotees at Jhansi. And there he met a Sanskrit scholar and professor who became his initiated disciple. And Prabhupada was there for Janmashtami. And they were staying in a ground floor, and the temple room was in the upper floor, so the deities wouldn't be walked on. But 1 o'clock in the morning, this professor, disciple, heard Prabhupada playing mridanga loudly and singing very loudly and dancing. So he went upstairs, 1 o'clock in the morning, and there he saw Prabhupada enthusiastically jumping and dancing and playing mridanga and wearing a very large kadamba flower garland. Those of you know what kadamba flowers look like. They're just round. They look like a little round ball, right? Kadamba flowers. You know? You don't know. They're just round. And normally, kadamba flowers are about the size of a golf ball. And, this is an interview of Prabhupada for Lilamrita. But this particular garland, they were the size of a tennis ball. And the whole room was fragrant, like celestial fragrance. And Prabhupada dancing and dancing. And he said, in Jhansi, kadamba flowers are very hard to find in the market. At 1 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to find any. And they're not that big, and they're not that fragrant. So he asked Prabhupada, where'd you get that garland? He didn't ask him why you were dancing, just where'd you get that garland? There's not available in Jhansi. Prabhupada smiled and went on playing mridanga, dancing. The next morning was Prabhupada's appearance day. So he directly asked Prabhupada, again, where did you get that garland? And then Prabhupada smiled and said, I was feeling great devotion for Krishna and praying to him for a nice Janmashtami celebration. So Krishna came, and Krishna gave me this garland. And I was feeling very ecstatic. And then Prabhupada started to cry, and that was it for the discussion. So our spiritual master, our founder Acharya, was on another platform of Krishna consciousness. How it was that he did what he did was because he was on another platform of Krishna consciousness. Wasn't an ordinary person. And he wanted to make his followers also benefited, at least to become happy. And become happy means you become Krishna conscious. And like this purport, this whole Bhagavatam is to relieve people of their distracted material circumstances of life and become again absorbed in Krishna thought. Maya sakta manak parta yogam yunjan varashraya samshayam samagram mam yata gyasasi touchtranu. That's what he wanted. Because what Krishna wanted. So that's what he wanted. And he was gifted. He was given power by Krishna to do that. The last thing, there was an interview with Prabhupada in, I'll send you the link, Paramatma. I'll send you this link and you can send to the others. It's very nice. Little short clips for now. Every now and then you can go and see. Prabhupada was interviewed in Berkeley just around the time of their second Rath Yatra. And one of the questions by the interviewer was, Swamiji, what's going to happen when you leave this world? What's going to happen to your movement? Without hesitation at all, Prabhupada said, I will live forever. Pause. In my books. And got up, walked out. Transcendentalist. So let's see if there's some discussion. Prabhupada's stories are very attractive and contagious.
Maharaj, I have 3 questions actually. I'm inquisitive and to know why Prabhupada's steps are not seen.
Why he did what?
Why we cannot see the footsteps of Prabhupada.
He said to Jamuna, one day you will know. You have to ask Jamuna. He empowered her to know, but I don't know.
Okay. And the second one is, the other day when we had a discussion in other house.
This devotee in Australia, he said, he also couldn't understand. Then when he read about Yudhishthira Maharaj, that Yudhishthira's feet didn't touch the ground because he was a pure devotee. But he said, I already knew that. Prabhupada's a pure devotee. So, that the inference of this young Prabhu was pure devotees, their feet don't touch the ground. But he said he got really close and they looked and his feet were touching the ground, but there was no mark on the ground.
Yes, Maharaj.
If you get a realization, you let me know, okay?
Hare Krishna.
Next.
Next one is, what is the difference between Rajasuya Yajna and Ashwamedha Yajna? Because if I remember, in the Rajasuya Yajna, he sent his four brothers four different directions and took the horse.
Yeah, the same procedure in an Ashwamedha Yagya. They send a challenge horse.
So both are same?
They're not the same.
Okay.
They have there's a point of similarity. The point of similarity is the horse. In the Rajasuya, it's challenge, pay tax, or or fight. The Ashwamedha Yagya is not, pay tax or fight. I don't know exactly the purpose, but a horse is sent to for some reason to sanctify, I guess, to gather funds needed or tribute needed in order to perform this Ashwamedha Yagya, because it's very expensive, even for kings.
Thank you, Maharaj. And third one is, sometimes we hear the deity worship is for the neophytes. On the other hand, we see so many realizations coming, advanced devotees getting reciprocations.
Well, it doesn't mean, because it says like that, doesn't mean it's an exclusive neophyte club to be a deity worshiper. And when you become, advanced devotee, you turn your deities over to somebody else. That's not what it means. It means it's especially important. And it's especially important because it helps fix the bodily conception upon the deity.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have one question that
You can ask your father to write to Dina Tarani and see if Junwan ever revealed her realization. Dina Tarani. That's the author of that biography of hers. And I don't have her email address, but you can find out. Prabhupada disciples will know.
Dina Tarani is
Dina Tarani is the author of the biography of Jamuna. And somebody that's likely to know that, many persons. Vishaka is likely to know how to reach her. Mukhya in Alachua is likely to know how to reach her. Malati is likely to know how to reach her. I don't know. But Dina Tarani, you could ask, because my daughter and I had the same question. I'd like to write to Dina Tarani about this. Maybe Malati has also heard from Jamuna or something. I don't know the answer. That's it. Something else?
no.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So you told without proper guidance, even though we go down, we are like tree trunks.
Say it again. Without what?
If we go Vrindavan without the proper channel, without proper guidance, that also we are like our legs are like tree trunks.
Oh, I didn't say it. Prabhupada said.
Then if we go Vrindavan, we are seeing the deities. Actually, the deities also seeing us, right?
Yes. So the main message is this, you can take it in a literal sense, and you make it easier for you to understand in the transcendental sense. And that is, the business of going to a holy place is not sightseeing. If you go with sightseeing, you're not going to get the full benefit. There's benefit, as you're pointing out. Krishna is seeing us. And for that matter, our legs were used in the service of going to the holy place. So there's spiritual benefit from that aspect, that much. But don't go as a tourist, that's what he's saying. Because some people do. And it's not like harmful, it's just they won't get the full benefit. You what? Okay. Something else.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The question I have is the paraphernalia of the deity is worshipable. The paraphernalia of the deities are worshipable is what
The paraphernalia is worshipable.
is worshipable, right? So my question is the paraphernalia of the pure devotees or the spiritual masters
Sure, same.
is the same as,
Same.
okay.
Same. Go ahead. Your daughter has something.
Yep.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is that is deity worship is important or chanting is important?
Is deity worship? Well, they're both important. Why is either or? Deity worship goes well with chanting. Chanting goes well with deity worship. Of the two, chant. Some persons don't worship deity, but they chant. Chant. But they go well together. Okay? Something else?
No.
No. Anybody else? Something? Nothing online. Okay, I thought you were sneaking over there to ask your question. I think that's it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.